Mr. Hartwell, will you move that thing so that all can sit down? If we can kind of keep that area clear as much as possible for the jury. All right, you may be seated. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and welcome back. Record will reflect this is cause number CR 21-134, CR 21-135, CR 21-333, CR 21-334, CR 21-335, style State of Texas versus Shelby, Dyan. In just a moment, we're going to get started. I'm going to give you some reminders, some admonishments, things to remember. I want you to recall the rules I gave you yesterday were not to discuss the case with one another or anyone else until you've received all of the evidence in the case, the closing arguments of counsel, and the court's jury charge. You'll be reminded that that's going to be juror misconduct if you violate that rule. If you see any member of your jury violating that, you're to tell them to stop immediately and then report that to the court so the court can address it. Okay. Logistically, what we're going to do is once we start the trial today, as I told you yesterday, we'll try to take breaks every hour and a half or so. We're also going to take a lunch break. Lunch break is going to be a little earlier today than I usually break. I usually break between 12 and 1 to 1:15. Today, we're going to go a little bit earlier. We're going to have lunch about 11:30. And then we're going to be back working about 12:45. Okay. What to expect today in just a moment. I'm going to ask the state of Texas to present their indictments against the defendant. She will rise and then she will enter a plea to those indictments, after which the state will be given an opportunity to present their opening statement, after which the defense can elect at that time to give their opening statement, or they can defer and wait till the state rests and closes their evidence before they give their opening statement. And I'll let Mr. Crawford make that election at that time. Okay. It's very important that you remember to listen closely. Take notes if needed. Those have been provided for you, as testimony will not be repeated. But of course, during the testimony, if you have a hard time hearing, if it's a witness is talking low or something, I will be able to hear that and I will make them speak up. But in the event that we're all hearing and you're not, it's very important that you notify the court, raise your hand, let me know. I'm not going to know unless you let me know. Okay, so let me know and we'll address that. All right, Mr. Hernandez. You have the indictments ready to present to the defendant. Ms. Newton, if you'll please rise.
I do, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Hernandez, on behalf of the state, if you'll present the indictments to Ms. Newton.
Yes, Your Honor. In cause number CR 21-00134, in the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, grand jury for the county of Van Zandt, state of Texas, duly selected, impaneled, sworn, charged, and organized as such at the January term AD 2021 of the 294th Judicial District Court for said county, upon their oaths present in and to said court at said term that Shelby Dyan Newton, hereinafter style defendant, on or about January 26, 2021, and before the presentment of this indictment in the county and state aforesaid, did then and there intentionally, knowingly, and recklessly cause bodily injury to Courtney Ashby by shooting her with a firearm, and the defendant did then and there use or exhibit a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, during the commission of the assault.
Mr. Hernandez, I'm going to stop you at that time. Ms. Newton, how do you plead to cause number CR 21-134?
All right,
thank you. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Your Honor. Cause number CR 21-00135, in the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury for the county of Van Zandt, state of Texas, duly selected, impaneled, sworn, charged, and organized as such at the January term AD 2021 of the 294th Judicial District Court for said county, upon their oaths present in and to said court at said term that Shelby Dyan Newton, hereinafter style defendant, on or about January 26, 2021, and before the presentment of this indictment in the county and state aforesaid, did then and there intentionally, knowingly, and recklessly cause bodily injury to Digger Page by shooting him with a firearm, and the defendant did then and there use or exhibit a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, during the commission of the assault.
And that's signed by the foreman of the grand jury.
It is, Your Honor. They both are. The previous, in fact, that I read was signed as well.
All right. Ms. Newton, how do you enter your plea to cause number CR 21-135? Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Hernandez.
Cause number CR 21-00333. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury for the county of Van Zandt, state of Texas, duly selected, impaneled, sworn, charged, and organized as such at the July term AD 2021 of the 294th Judicial District Court for said county, upon their oaths present in and to said court at said term that Shelby Dyan Newton, hereinafter styled the defendant, on or about January 26, 2021, and before the presentment of this indictment in the county and state aforesaid, did then and there intentionally and knowingly threaten Emma Cobb, a child, with imminent bodily injury by discharging a firearm at the vehicle in which Emma Cobb was riding, and did then and there use or exhibit a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, during the commission of the assault, signed by the foreman of the grand jury.
Ms. Newton, how do you enter a plea to cause number CR 21-333? Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Cause number CR 21-00334. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury for the county of Van Zandt, state of Texas, duly selected, impaneled, sworn, charged, and organized as such at the July term AD 2021 of the 294th Judicial District Court for said county, upon their oaths present in and to said court at said term that Shelby Dyan Newton, hereinafter styled defendant, on or about January 26, 2021, and before the presentment of this indictment in the county and state aforesaid, did then and there intentionally and knowingly threaten Natalie Ashby, a child, with imminent bodily injury, discharging a firearm at the vehicle in which Natalie Ashby was riding, and did then and there use or exhibit a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, during the commission of the assault, signed by the foreman of the grand jury.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Ms. Newton, how do you enter a plea to cause number CR 21-334? Mr. Hernandez.
Cause CR 21-00335. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury for the county of Van Zandt. The grand jury for the county of Van Zandt, state of Texas, duly selected, impaneled, sworn, charged, and organized as such at the July term 2021 of the 294th Judicial District Court for said county, upon their oaths present in and to said court at said term that Shelby Dyan Newton, hereinafter styled defendant, on or about January 26, 2021, and before the presentment of this indictment in the county and state aforesaid, did then and there intentionally and knowingly threaten Lily Bush, a child, with imminent bodily injury by discharging a firearm at the vehicle in which Lily Bush was riding, and did then and there use or exhibit a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, during the commission of the assault, signed by the foreman of the grand jury.
And Ms. Newton, how do you enter your plea to cause number CR 21-335? Thank you, ma'am. You may be seated. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in just a moment, we're going to allow the attorneys to give their opening statements, after which the state will be calling its witnesses, the state bearing the burden of proof in this case, will call their witnesses and they'll have the first opportunity to question their witnesses. After they question their witnesses, they'll pass those witnesses to the defense for cross-examination. And that may continue in a like manner until all of the testimony is received from the witness, and then the witness will be excused. We'll follow in that same pattern until the state has called all of their witnesses, after which the state will rest its case, rest its evidence, and then the defense, if they choose to, will be allowed to put on any witnesses or evidence that they want to, understanding that, remembering that the defendant is presumed innocent. Understand? All right. Mr. Hernandez, on behalf of the state, would you like an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed. And if you'll read your microphone with you to put in.
That may please support counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for participating in this process. And now it's your turn to listen to the evidence. And we ask you at the close of the evidence to render a fair and just verdict. On or about January 25th, 2021, at Wills Point in Van Zandt County, Texas, at approximately, and that would be the Willow Lake Estates, at approximately 8:40 p.m., the 911 operator received a call from a Mr. Digger Page and Natalie Posey Ashby, who was 11 years old at the time. They were on speakerphone and they were yelling, raising their voices at the 911 operator, telling them that Digger had been shot, my mom has been shot, and they are chasing us. Let's take a step back. Earlier that evening, well, let's go even further back. Sometime in December of 2020, Digger Page met Miss Danielle Ashby. Her first name is Courtney, but she goes by Danielle, Courtney Ashby. And they began to spend some time together, getting to know one another. That would have been before Christmas of the year 2020. By January 25th, 2021, the date in question, Danielle had decided that she was going to break up with Mr. Page. She just didn't think it was a good idea for them to be together anymore. He convinced her that maybe they could talk about it to see if they could save the relationship. So he went by her father's house in Terrell and Mr. Page picked up Miss Ashby in his Nissan Armada. Miss Ashby had her 3 little girls with her. You're going to hear Lily Bush, Emma Cobb, and Natalie Ashby. Natalie was 11, Emma was 8, and Lily, I believe, was 2, maybe going on 3. So they decided to try and find a quiet spot where they could talk. And Digger thought, well, why don't I give some good friends a call? Maybe they can let us go to their house, have a quiet place to talk about our relationship. And so Digger called Shelby Newton. He called her on speakerphone and said, hey, is it okay if we come by? There was some chit chat back and forth, and she said, sure, come on by. So they start driving over from Terrell to Wills Point. Took about 20 minutes, maybe half hour. They get up to the gate at Willow Lakes and it is closed. So once again, Mr. Page pulls out his cell phone and calls Shelby Newton to say, what is the code? We need, we can't get in. She shares the code with them and they drive in. Both of these calls happened on speakerphone. So Danielle Ashby heard the phone call. Her daughter, Natalie Ashby, heard the phone call. They pull up to the house and both Danielle Ashby, the mom, and Digger Page, who was driving, get out of the car. They decide to leave the 3 girls in the back seat, and Digger Page says, here's my phone, how about watching some YouTube videos? We shouldn't be long. You're going to hear Danielle Ashby testify that when they pulled up, Shelby Newton was waiting for them outside her home, whether it was on the deck or down below, but she was waiting for them. And she gave them a great big smile when they got out of the car. She invited them into her home. They walked in. She walked in behind them. She said, let's go. Shelby Newton said, let's go into the laundry room, which was one of the rooms closest to the back door, which is where they entered the residence. Digger Page and Danielle Ashby walked into that laundry room. At that moment, Shelby Newton says, let me go do something with my baby, or let me take care of my little girl. I'll be right back. And closes the laundry room door. You're going to hear from Danielle Ashby that she just felt a little uneasy. She had never met her face to face. She'd never met Shelby Newton face to face. But you'll hear that she recalled getting a ride from Shelby Newton some 5 years before that, when she was at a Dollar General buying groceries, and it was a very, very cold day out. Shelby Newton offered her a ride home. So she didn't forget that. So she knew, Shelby knew, not personally, they hadn't been introduced necessarily, but it was a very short exchange sometime before that. So she says, oh, that's who it is. But at this moment, while Danielle Ashby is in that laundry room, she's getting an uncomfortable feeling like, why are we in this room? And Digger Page was starting to pace back and forth, making her even more uneasy. A few moments later, if even that, you're going to hear how the door opened up. Shelby Newton had a box, reaches into the box and pulls out a 9mm gun and shoots. She shoots Danielle Ashby. 2 shots, maybe 1 shot. And there is this look of amazement, like from Miss Ashby, like, is this happening? She looked to Mr. Page and said, your friend just shot me. In that moment, she continues to shoot. You're going to hear how many times and how many bullets went through Danielle Ashby's body that night. At that point, Digger Page lunges in front of her, and it just so happens that the gun jams. Danielle Ashby's going to tell you she heard clicking. She heard clicking. She looked around. She was in shock. Didn't necessarily feel pain at that instant. But at the very moment that they hear the clicking, Mr. Page dives out the laundry room window, head first, straight out. Danielle Ashby decides, I need to get out of here. Who? And goes back through the door. Well, at that moment, Shelby Newton had already run back to her kitchen a very short distance and grabbed a .38 caliber revolver. And you're going to hear how, as Miss Danielle Ashby was trying to get out of that home, she had her back to Shelby Newton and was shot in the back. She's trying to get out of that house. She stumbles out the door, and you'll see some photographs. She stumbles down the stairs. And the first moment that crosses her mind as she comes up to the car where her little girls were is, if they're chasing me, I don't want anybody to know my little girls are in the car. So she keeps running and runs around to the front of the house and collapses. It's about 8:35, maybe, close to 8:40 at this moment. Digger Page, if you recall, jumped out the window when that gun started clicking and no bullets were coming out. He picks himself up. Prior to jumping out the window, he had raised up his arm in a very defensive-like manner and took a shot right through the arm. After he takes that shot, he jumps out the window, gets his bearings, gets up and runs to the car, jumps in the car, and starts driving away with the 3 little girls. Danielle Ashby's in that front yard with several bullet holes. So dark. So they get in their car and leave. And as they're leaving, Shelby Newton, her little baby, and her husband, Jonathan Curtis, get in their car. They take off. And they begin to follow Digger Page through the streets of Wills Point. And it's at that point that brings us to that approximate 8:40 p.m. phone call with 911, where Digger Page and Natalie Ashby are saying, please help us, please help us. The operator, to her credit, remained very calm, was getting frustrated because she said, where are you? Tell me what street you're on. Give me an address. All they could say is Willow Lakes, Willow Lakes. We're getting close to Willow. We're in Wills Point. We're in Wills Point. They get to the point where they see a mobile gas station that's not too far away from where Shelby Newton lived. And they pull in there and say, we're at a mobile station. Well, that gave the 911 operator a little better idea of where they might be. By then, units were scattering all over the place. It was fortunate enough that the Willow Lakes development, that at the time, Sheriff Steve Hendricks was also the HOA president. So he knew that property well. So he, along with, let's see here, State Trooper Stokes, with Public Safety Trooper James Matt Cosper and Texas Game Warden Drew Stokes, responded to that Willow Lakes area. And they kind of had an idea of what Digger Page was describing. And then they start walking about the house, and lo and behold, they come upon the body of Danielle Ashby lying there on the ground, bleeding out. Trooper Cosper and Game Warden Stokes immediately begin CPR. While they're administering CPR to Danielle Ashby, got this car chase going on, because you're going to hear in that 911 call, Digger Page is saying, they're after us. They're chasing me. They're firing. She's firing. She is firing her gun at us. And then they get on 80 and decide to try and get away. Well, lo and behold, the same as it was described by Mr. Page, champagne-colored Dodge Durango is on their tail, following. They have not stopped really long enough to be able to give law enforcement location. But they keep throwing out, well, now I see this, now I see that. We're on 80. Well, I think we're headed to Terrell. They finally pull over long enough to notice a lot of police vehicles behind them, lights flashing. But at that very moment, they also see the defendant in the Dodge Durango driving up behind them, passes them, and continues to go. And you'll get that simultaneous comment from them when they're on the phone with 911. They finally say, they're here. Police is here. And immediately Digger Page says, please help Danielle. She's back at Willow Lakes. Please, please help her. Danielle Ashby at that moment decided to drive to Terrell. And you're going to hear some ideas that they kind of crafted of what they wanted to do. And this is what she told law enforcement after being advised of her Miranda rights. She said, yeah, well, at first, she said, well, we were driving on 80 and our Dodge Durango ran out of gas. And then that story changes. Well, no, we made it to my father-in-law's house. And then they came back in a Chevrolet truck. They asked her, well, did you leave the car on the side of the road? She says, no, I think my brother-in-law came and got it. Then she says, no, I think we did make it to their house. They asked her, did you have any guns in the Durango? She says, no, initially, no guns. What about the gun back at your house? Oh yeah, it's in the pantry. It's a 9mm. I shot them. So this isn't a whodunit. You hear the testimony revealed. She says, I shot them. But she was very clear that she didn't have a gun in that Dodge Durango. She didn't. And as it turns out, within a few hours, she says, well, okay, we did drive to Terrell. Okay, I did have my revolver, my .38 caliber revolver in the Dodge Durango, but I put it in the center console. I never fired. That revolver made its way back to the sheriff's department some 2-3 days later. As it would happen, her father-in-law in Terrell says he was looking about his front door area on the deck, and he saw a gun. He thought it might be important enough for him to bring it into police, and he did. The evidence is going to show that during this entire event, not once did Shelby reach out to law enforcement. Not once did she call the police and say, I need help. Danielle Ashby lay dying on that front yard, but for the fact that people knew enough to find her and help her. At the close of the evidence, we're going to ask you to find Shelby Newton guilty of the 5 aggravated assault counts. 1 count for Digger Page, 1 count for Miss Courtney Danielle Ashby, 1 count for Natalie Ashby, 1 count for Emma Cobb, 1 count for Lily Bush. Those 3 children that were in the car when she was firing her weapon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Crawford, on behalf of Ms. Newton, would you like an opening statement at this time? Yes, sir. You may proceed, sir. Please pull the correct hand. Oh, just real quick. Yes, sir. Dyan was getting paid back. Shelby went to the laundry room, down the hall, get a towel. Like, this roll of both of the laundry. One closer to the bathroom where the baby is. Eyes open. 6'8", 6'. Man. What's happening? That's sit up. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Smiley, give them their microphone back in trouble. You'll take that one. Yes. That back up. But there you go. Mr. Hernandez, the state calls first witness. Charlotte.
Yes, Your Honor. State calls Game Warden Stokes.
Sir, I've already placed you under oath, but for purposes of the record, you understand that you've already been placed under oath to tell the truth of your testimony to the court here today under penalty of perjury. So I'll be back. Yes, sir. Watch your step. Please have a seat. You can move that chair around, make yourself comfortable as much as you can. That microphone does not extend. We'll adjust it to make yourself comfortable.
Okay.
Best that you can. During your testimony, ask them to speak up loudly. So the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the board, the attorneys can hear you. During your testimony, make sure that you're answering questions and allowing the question to be asked before you answer. Don't try to help the attorney by starting your answer before they're finished. Makes it very difficult for my court reporter here to type down what you were saying. If during your testimony, an emergency vehicle or a file truck or something comes by the courthouse, make it difficult to hear, just stop your testimony. The attorneys may stop asking questions, let that sound pass so that we can make sure that we can hear what you have to say. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Questions?
No, sir.
All right. Mr. Harlow, you're with us.
Thank you. Good morning, Game Warden Stokes. Can you please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the record?
Yes, it's my name's David Stokes, last name Stokes.
And can you tell me what you do for a living?
Yes, I'm a game warden, so we enforce all laws in the state of Texas, but mainly focus on hunting, fishing, boating safety, those laws.
And as part of being a game warden, are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, I am.
And how long have you been a certified peace officer in the state of Texas?
10 years.
Can you tell me a little bit about the training you go through to become a game warden and a peace officer?
We have a 30-week academy that I attended. It's a live-in academy. And in that academy, we go through all the same training that any peace officer in the state goes through. And then additionally, we have all of our parks and wildlife code that we go through as well.
And you mentioned that your primary duties are related to hunting, fishing, boating, those types of things. Do you have other duties that you perform?
Yes, sir. We assist in the communities we're in. We assist the local agencies. We assist other state agencies such as DPS. We assist with public safety, things like that.
So would it be within the realm of your responsibilities to help out if a call went out about a shooting?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember January 25th of 2021?
Yes, sir.
Did anything happen that day that drew you to respond to an incident?
A call over the Van Zandt County radio system.
And can you describe what was the nature of the call?
The best I can remember, there was a shooting with a victim down.
Response from state.
Your Honor, it's to go towards why Mr. Stokes responded, not necessarily to the truth of the matter asserted, but why he took the actions that he took.
Or overrules the objection. Good answer.
There was a radio call out that there was a shooting and potentially a victim down in the Wills Point area. And there was a continued shooting that was going on through Wills Point, I believe, on the road. And so that brought me to the initial victim is where I went to look for that initial victim.
And in your decision-making process, why did you decide to look for the initial victim rather than a potential rolling shooting?
I heard that several other officers had checked en route.
It's not on record, just for why Dyan Stokes made the decision that he made.
You intend to testify as to what another officer said.
No, sir.
Court's going to sustain the objection as to any hearsay statement. You can answer as long as you're not repeating what someone else has told you. That's not present in testifying here.
Yes, sir.
So Dyan Stokes, I'll rephrase without saying what anybody said specifically. Why did you decide to go to that the initial victim?
I knew there was a victim, a shooting victim that was down and potentially needing medical help. And so that's why I chose to go to that location.
And when you arrived at the Willow Lake Estates, can you tell me a little bit about how you arrived, whether there was anybody else there with you?
When I arrived along with DPS Trooper Cosper and Sheriff Hendricks, and I don't remember what order we all arrived, but we all met at the front gate about the same time. So it was pretty close timing that we all arrived.
Why would you have met at the front gate if that's not where did you have reason to believe that's where the victim was?
There wasn't an exact location on the victim. We knew the victim was in that subdivision somewhere. And also there was a locked gate at the front of that subdivision.
If the gate was locked, how were you able to get through it?
I believe Sheriff Hendricks had a code. He had he'd lived in there in the past, I believe.
So when you once you got through the gate, how did you decide what direction to go in?
I don't recall.
Is it fair to say that, or did you have to go multiple directions, or were you able to find the victim fairly quickly?
We found the victim fairly quick. We went to what I believe is the back end of that subdivision. And I know that's where we parked our units, and we're asking neighbors if they had heard shots. And it was relatively quickly that the victim was located, fairly close to where we stopped at.
And can you describe, Willow Lake Estates, just the general, lighting, condition of the road, how far your field of view was?
It's been 3 years since I've been in there, but it was fairly dark from what I remember. When you drive in, you drive around a lake, and it was a bunch of houses and dimly lit, I guess is the best way I could put it.
So, when you got to where you were, pretty sure the victim was, what did you decide to do next?
We started asking neighbors if they had heard gunshots, which they had not. And then the Sheriff Hendricks had an idea, I don't know why he had an idea to go down towards this house, but he did. And, so I remember I got my rifle because we didn't know there was still a shooter on scene or anything. And we walked a very short distance, and the sheriff came upon the shooting victim.
And do you recall, what the address was for that home?
I do not.
Does 1399 Willow Drive in
I'll wait. Okay, go ahead. Ask your question.
1399 Willow Drive in Wills Point, does that sound familiar?
It does not. It's been so long.
Did you write a report shortly after this incident?
Yes, sir, I did.
If it was in your report, would reading a report help refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'm showing counsel Trooper Stokes' report. And Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Trooper Stokes, I'm handing you your report. Once you've had a chance to review that, and it has refreshed your memory, please settle down or hand it back to me.
Are you wanting me to review the whole thing or just to see that this is mine?
Just for the evidence.
Okay.
And if it's not your report,
Yes, sir. It is my report.
and after reading the report, does that address sound accurate?
Yes, the address 1399 is accurate.
And is that address in Van Zandt County?
Yes, sir, it is.
And it was then in Van Zandt County and is still in Van Zandt County?
Yes, sir.
So once you found Miss Ashby, can you tell us what your first impressions were?
My first impressions was that I thought she was deceased already. She was in pretty bad shape.
Do you remember what led you, or describe what you mean by pretty bad shape?
She was laying there, not moving. It didn't appear her breaths were very shallow and far between. So it didn't at first glance, it did not appear she was breathing.
At some point, did you discover that she was still alive?
Yes.
What did you do at that point?
At that point, I immediately yelled to Trooper Cosper to get his medical trauma bag, and I did as well. And I ran back to my patrol unit, placed the rifle back in the truck, and switched to a medical bag.
Once you returned to Miss Ashby from grabbing your medical bag, what did you begin doing?
We began by cutting the victim's shirt off, looking for bullet holes and the source of the bleeding, of which there were several. And we began trying to put gauze and patch as many holes as we could.
Were you able to ever get a final count of how many times she was shot?
I don't recall the exact number.
Do you remember about how many times or about how many wounds you saw?
We thought there was 5 to 6 gunshot wounds, and that was based off of the bullet going through and through. So there was, from what we could see, 10 to 12 holes at least.
And at that point, do you know if EMS was already en route?
At some point in there, we had requested EMS, and I believe they were already en route, but I don't know for sure.
So, I'm sorry.
I do know that multiple times I was requesting EMS and trying to find out how long, because it was I did not think that she had very long at all to live.
So between you, Trooper Cosper, and Sheriff Hendricks, between the three of you, you had to request EMS. It wasn't en route when you first arrived.
Even if it was en route, we still would request, just to make sure, you don't want to be there with a victim and find out that they're not. So we're feeding tons of information to dispatch, and they're, trying to sort it out the best they can.
Do you recall the approximate locations of the gunshot wounds?
I believe most of them were in the chest, and I think maybe one in the arm.
And you said earlier that you thought that she might die. Was there, in your training and experience, have you run across many gunshot victims before?
I've been around a couple of gunshot victims.
And to your recollection, were any of those, can you compare this event to what you've seen in the past?
The ones I've seen in the past,
Your Honor, just getting a baseline for why he thought this was so serious that this action was about to die.
Right, of course, going to overrule as to relevance, but it has to be developed.
while looking at the victim, there was multiple holes, a substantial amount of blood. At one point, the victim coughed and blood squirted out of her back, and she was in an extreme amount of pain, was barely able to talk. Some of her, we would ask questions, and the response was not what we were asking. So having been around victims that have died from different trauma in the past, it looked very similar.
So what? So you said that some of the questions that you actually gave non-responsive answers. Can you describe kind of her condition and her ability to her sense of presence?
It at first seemed that she was making more sense, and then the longer the situation went on, we could ask her something such as, what was her kid's name? I know in the body cam there was some instances, but she would answer with her name, or just not the question we were asking. And at the beginning, you'd ask her name, and it would be a little bit of a better answer. And it just seemed that she was gradually declining in her cognitive ability.
And what kinds of questions did you ask her?
We asked her if she saw who shot her, who had shot her. We asked her I'm sorry.
What was her answer to that question?
Her answer, I remember it was surprising because she said, we asked her what his name was, and I think she said Shelby, and then she said it's a girl, and that was surprising to us. You know, most shootings don't involve women, so
Were there other questions that you asked other than her name?
we asked a fair amount of questions about if there was anybody else in the house, if there were kids, because she had her kids with her at some point, and we wanted to make sure, you know, we were concerned about the safety of the kids and wanted to make sure there wasn't still, you know, the shooter or another victim in the house. We asked her if she had any allergies to any kind of medications. We just a lot of our conversation was just trying to keep her awake, you know, trying to keep her alive. That was the main focus.
As to whether her kids were there, was she able to give an answer to that? Your Honor, President sense impression, she's telling the trooper what she just experienced.
Objection sustained.
So at the time that you were asking the questions, what else were you doing?
We were trying to stop her bleeding as much as we could. So we had gauze on wounds. At one point we had chest seals on wounds, and there was more wounds than there were hands to cover the wounds. So we just were trying to stop the worst bleeding the best we could until EMS arrived.
Once EMS arrived, did they pretty much take over? Did they just assist? How did that interaction occur?
At that point, they pretty much take over. We assist with anything we can, but it was still kind of all hands on deck to trying to save her.
And Game Warden Stokes, did you have a body camera that night?
Yes, I did.
Did you know how to use it?
Yes, I did.
Did you have it activated at that time?
Yes.
Do you know, did it actually make a recording?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to review that recording?
Yes, I have.
And is it a fair and accurate recording of what was captured that night?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, state would like to approach the witness.
May approach.
And Game Warden Stokes, and I'm sorry, Your Honor, I grab the exhibit sticker. And Game Warden Stokes, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me what that is?
This is my body cam, the DVD of my body cam footage.
Your Honor, at this time, state offer State's Exhibit 1. Stokes.
Any objections, Mr. Crawford? I'm with Dave. All right, there being no objection, State's Exhibit 1 is in.
And Your Honor, state request permission to publish the hearing.
Granted.
Your Honor, while Mr. Hart was setting up, I don't know, alternate juror would like to move his chair so he doesn't strain his neck or if that's.
May do so, sir. Yes, sir, absolutely. Yeah. I would move around. Cheers. You want to stay with us? Stay with me, Martin. Cheers. Take your time. Hey, Daniel, talk to me. How old are you, Daniel? Talk to me, Daniel. How old are you? 32. We got you. Right. You better for the help, Daniel. Help? Yeah, who else is gonna help? Where you start, Daniel? I know where. In Shelby? Where's Shelby? You know where? Yeah, probably it's probably managed to send it. Everything over here looks like 12 hours, but it's impossible. And we'll do it on the website. You live here, Dan. Daniel, where do you live? Daniel, Hopkins. Can you hear me, Daniel? I know. So you got one of these chefs, you know. You know that guy's here? Oh, good. That's right there. We got another one there? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Daniel, can you bring up there? Daniel, verify you this. I know, I know, that's just one for the break, y'all. I got them fine anymore. I know, they're coming, they're coming. I know, they're not. Who shots you? Who shots you? Why is so easy? You live? Where do you live? Zero? What do you do? Have friends here? Yeah. Daniel, talk to me. Daniel, talk to me. Talk to me. No. You got your week. I think 3 days months. They'll talk to me. You bring them. Right there. I know it's gonna hurt, Daniel. We got lots of long dress. Daniel, talk to me. Come on, stay with us.
She looked over, hurt me so bad.
I know.
Look, always plenty.
We gotta go still, Daniel.
Like, oh, you're hurting, goddamn it.
We gotta want you still, Daniel. Stay, here you go, stay. We gotta be bleeding, Daniel. We gotta stop the bleeding. With the other hand, we can see she's got more of that, so that side, because the blood on the left side.
You're so bad, please, God.
Is your house in the house?
Yeah, please,
I know, Danielle, is your house in the house?
no.
No? Danielle, who else in the house?
There's
Blood up here in her breast area. That's how it's. I'll see if I can see her. She could more than likely be laying on top of this. I know. Yeah, like a breast. She can be there. Danielle, is your house in the house?
Yes,
Who else is in the house? Give me a name.
Digger,
Tigger?
Digger,
Digger? Is he male?
no.
Okay.
What's her?
Did Digger see what happened?
No,
You messed up.
I heard a place.
You're gonna be all right, Danielle. Can you breathe okay?
They hurt so bad.
I know, we're almost got it. We gotta keep this on so you don't bleed out,
They're
okay?
probably killing me.
I know, we gotta keep pressure on you. Daniel, who was else with you tonight besides you and Digger and Shelby? Who else was here? Who else was here? Stay with us, come on. Hey, come on.
Kids,
Where are your kids at right now?
in the house.
In the house?
Mhm.
Chad, you wanna see if you wanna sit there, make sure some things. This house or your house in Cheryl?
Here we go.
Here, you know where you're at? Where you at? Danielle, come on down, let's go. See if something's coming,
I
Danielle.
can't hurt. I can't hurt. You're not
I got you, Danielle. You got you. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay, there you go. Huh?
You're kidding.
No, you're gonna be
You're
okay.
not gonna-
I know. Keep talking to me, Danielle. Where are you from originally? Where were you born? Where were you born, Danielle?
There are people she wants things.
How old are your kids? How old are your kids? 11? Is it just one? What's the other kid? How old's the other kid? Are they both here, 4 and 11? What are the names? What are your kids' names, Danielle?
Now, please not.
We're helping you. Danielle, we are helping you. You must come away. Tell me about your kids. Come on, keep talking to them. What's their names? What are your kids' names? Talk to me. What are your kids' names? What are your kids' names, Danielle? Talk. Danielle, keep fighting. You gotta fight for your kids. Come on.
Danielle, you hurt your kidney.
What are your kids' names? What are your kids' names, Danielle?
Natalie,
Natalie and what?
Lily,
Are they both here? Were they at the house?
Cooper,
In the car? You were very proud of the kids in that car, Sheriff? No, sir. Probably one. That's all right. No idea. You don't know any kids. You're gonna be okay, Danielle, keep talking to me. Danielle, keep breathing, keep breathing. You better fight for your kids, come on, you need to fight.
Coffee,
We're not gonna get off you. We gotta hold this, you're bleeding, Danielle, we gotta stop the bleeding. So what you talking about, come on, in the car, is that your husband in the car? Who's in the car? Who's driving the car? Who's driving the car, Danielle? Who's driving the car, Danielle?
yes,
Make sure they know that. You're gonna get it. Come on, man. Okay, what the Danielle, talk to me.
yeah.
Okay, breathe, Danielle, just breathe. Tell me about your kids.
I got my phone.
What school do your kid go to? Huh?
They know how to go.
They go all so long, okay. What's your address where you live? What's your address? What's your address, Danielle? Danielle, what's your address?
Still blocking the way in there, I think. I got a lot, but here,
We got pressure on
my sheriff is a, what? What's that, it's not,
I know, Danielle, I gotta keep pressure on you, bleeding. I gotta keep pressure.
Daniel, it's almost here, you hear him?
Ambulance is coming.
Everything got a little better.
Yeah, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. I know, Danielle, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to. But we gotta keep pressure on you, you're gonna bleed. We're trying to stop you from bleeding. Why did Shelby shoot you off? Was there an argument?
How do you know Shelby?
No,
How did you know his name's Shelby then?
you know,
Is Shelby a boy or girl?
Girl, please don't.
We're gonna help her up right now, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. What does she look like? Can you describe her?
Chunky.
She's chunky. What color's her hair? Dark brown? Is it long? Is it in a ponytail? It's in a ponytail. What was she wearing? What clothes was she wearing? Did you see what kind of gun she had? Were you outside when you got shot? Yeah, where were you when you got shot? You're right here? Okay. You're gonna be okay, Danielle, just keep staying with us. You're gonna be okay, we gotta keep pressure on her, look hurt, but we gotta keep pressure on her, you're gonna bleed, okay?
Please don't.
I can't, Danielle, we gotta keep pressure on you, I'm not like, well, please, I'm good for right now. I'd like somebody to come in. Is it okay to release your kids to Sabrina?
Tell it, please, sorry, you're home.
We're not sitting on that, I just hold this right here, because you're bleeding, then we're just holding you, stand, I got all these here, because you're bleeding. This is all here. And she's thinking about your kids, keep thinking about the kids, you're gonna get to see them again, okay? What's your address where you live? What's your address? Huh? What's your address, Danielle? Tell me. You know where you live, what city do you live in? Huh? What's the name of the city? What's the name of the city, Danielle?
You're home.
Sarah, your help, Danielle, keep breathing, you're gonna be okay, Dan, it's almost here. Are you breathing okay? Can you breathe okay? Does it hurt to breathe? Okay, just keep breathing, okay? Just keep breathing on your own. I'm not trying to hurt you, Danielle, just stay with me, breathe, okay, breathe. There's somebody across the way. What? You see flashing lights? Be okay, Danielle, talk to you, you're good, you're tough, stay with me. Where'd you go to school, Danielle? Where'd you go to high school? Danielle, where'd you go to high school? Talk to me. Where'd you go to high school?
Wait, no,
I can't let go of you, Danielle, you're gonna bleed. Where'd you go to high school, Danielle? Danielle, where'd you go to high school? Danielle, where'd you go to high school? Danielle, talk to me, where'd you go to high school?
Danielle.
Danielle, what high school? Stop asking your dad.
Yeah.
Here comes on. It's hard to watch, I guess. We can't let you go, Danielle, we're still with us, so how options? Keep breathing. Huh? So that's your. Don't worry about it, so we gotta keep pushing on it now. Keep talking to me, Danielle, what high school did you go to? Danielle, what high school, so you don't have oxygen in high school box, it's on the, let's go, there's a big white oxygen. Let's go, Danielle, you're hurting, I gotta pull this here so you don't bleed, okay? We're trying to stop you from bleeding. Look, where'd you graduate, Danielle? Do you work? You have a job?
No.
Okay, well, you should have kids, that's a lot of work, isn't it? Yeah, like homeschool your kids? What are the names again? What are your kids' names? What are your kids' names, Danielle? Danielle, what are your kids' names? Danielle, what are your kids' names? Talk to me. What are your kids' names? Danielle, what are your kids' names? What are your kids' names, Danielle? Talk to me. Danielle, keep breathing. What are your kids' names? What are your kids' names? Talk to me. You better fight, Danielle, come on, fight. Come on, Danielle, keep talking to me. Come on, Danielle, talk to me. Danielle. What's your kid's name, Danielle? What's your kid's name? Danielle, what's your kid's name? Keep fighting, they're almost there, Danielle, we can see them. Come on, they're coming. Come on, Danielle, stay with me. I feel like you, Danielle, what's your kid's name? What are your kids' names? Natalie what? Natalie what? I can't do this, I got a little right there, Danielle. Well, Natalie what? What's your other kid's name? I can't get off to Danielle. What your sheriff board? Come on, what are you gonna do today? Natalie what? Come on, Danielle. I gotta hold it here, Danielle. You're bleeding, I can't, you don't can. You're bleeding, Danielle, I gotta stop it. I gotta hold right here, talk to me. You've been drinking alcohol?
No, I'm drinking.
You don't drink, have you done any drugs today?
No.
Okay. You allergic to any medications? What? What are you allergic to? What are you allergic to, Danielle? Come on, Danielle, what are you allergic to? Come on, Danielle, answer us, come on.
Well, just like.
I can't let you know, it's a no, answer the question, don't move my hand, put your hand, what's your. I know, Danielle, you're bleeding, I have to hold it there. What are you allergic to, Danielle? There you go, you feel better? Feel better?
Yeah.
Okay, you breathe better. Danielle, what'd you eat tonight? What'd you have to eat? What medicines are you allergic to?
Twirl.
What else?
There's some water.
We'll get some water here in just a minute, I'm gonna get you some help.
Please help me.
And you're right here. No, Danielle, no, no, you're bleeding, Danielle, I'm not. What's wrong now, Danielle? No, what's wrong now?
Please get on here, I'm okay.
I can't let it go, Danielle, you're bleeding, you're bleeding.
I'm transferring.
I know, Danielle, I'm sorry. Your hearting's good, that means you're alive.
What?
Stop, Danielle, stop now. I can't let go, Danielle, you're bleeding.
Help
I can't, Danielle, you're bleeding.
me.
Okay, hold this right here, I've got to stop the bleeding. Multiple GSW, she's a water coach, it's a total.
Help me.
I've got these, 4 entry wounds, 2 exit wounds. Possible lung injury, coming at the mouth, shortness of breath. Right now, I just gotta keep pressing, she's got a small palate, it looks like possible. Stay with us, come on, Danielle. Entry wounds. I can't let go, Danielle.
Please don't hurt me. Please.
I'm gonna move my hand, you're gonna hold right there, you got it, right? 1, 2, 3. That's all right there. Got this one over here, this is the egg, and the rest is. Danielle,
No.
I know Danielle, it hurts.
No.
Hold it. Danielle, you been shot in the leg, were you hit the leg?
No.
Okay. How many times were you hit?
So, go to sit down.
5, 6, 7? Were you shot from behind?
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Make sure you're all over here. We haven't done a triage on the back yet, we haven't done the mover, just so we get it.
No.
Have it moved.
No.
Do you have any chest signals? I do, I do. I don't know if one of my favorites in my phone. Right there, right there.
No.
Yeah, let's do.
Please, please.
We're up, Danielle, keep on, it's okay?
Yeah, let's sit for myself.
No, no, no.
I'm hurt.
No, Danielle, everybody just sit here. If you wanna hold, so it's me, you can sit away, so down, you're ready. Okay, then stay with us. Stay with us.
No.
Stay with us, Danielle. Stay
It
with us.
hurts me.
I'm telling you. Yeah, stop the bleeding, okay? I'm about to put it back, okay? Yeah. Get some air, when you're ready. Ready? 1, 2, 3, switch. Got 2 right there. For my hand is, we are responsible for one more chance, so that. You're on your hand. Yes. Go on. After you do this. Then roll the egg on the first thing. That better? Okay, keep talking, so you're on, soon, you're on, soon, yes. You know, and you know, it's probably. One up track. Hold on. She has. Okay. Here's one damage to the. What's today, y'all? What's today? Tuesday? Okay, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite color, Daniel? Purple? Okay, what's your favorite car? What's your favorite car, Daniel? What's your favorite car, Daniel? Rob's supposed to be one of these. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all the class, let's have a meeting. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. What's your good name, Daniel? What are your good names? Matt, any relief somehow? Daniel, what's your good name? Alan what? Alan what? What's your other good name? What's your other good name? Huh? Alan Scott? I'm surprised. You still like it? That's it. She got a shot down. What that was off? And we get you one from, once you say, I know. No. Yeah. So we're hanging out, stay with us. Sarah, you mind coming with us in the house? Nobody can go. The bucket can go to the ground? And yo, where you kids? Where you kids? Where you kids? What's your 4-year-old? Danielle? Really? You had some girls? 3 girls. Where do you even sound? I'll be great. I got volunteer on so I work with you. Hey, Daniel, is your name? Roll it now? What year is this? What year is it, Daniel? What year is it, Daniel? Last month. Yes. Everyone, stuff that's female. Female and Shelby. What was it? Shelby a woman? Shelby a woman? Have you seen Shelby before? Shelby. One look at that. No. The before everyone else out the back, 290 pounds. We're gonna put chest seals on the room, that one expression on 290 on the side. We get past that. Good, I grab a seat bar and we're talking. I'm gonna get a seat bar on that. Thanks. What city were you born in? What city? Carol. What's your mother's name? What's your mom's name? What's your dad's name? You have a brother? You have a brother? What are your brother's names? Talk to me, then know what your brother's names. What are their names? What are your brother's names, Danielle? Talk to me. I'll give you a little. Yeah, she said she didn't know. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the. She said she was shot 5 or 6 times. We got, 3 incidents. I was like, I told you, 100% sure how much I was, the engine was on. Speak up. What's your brother's name? What's your brother's name? What's your brother's name? What does Gas do? Is he work? What does he do? What does he do? What's Gas live? What's it? It's my heart for a little bit. Yeah, go for it. And what are you talking about tomorrow? What's that hurt now? Over. We're gonna roll over to the back, so we're quick. It's gonna hurt a little bit, Danny. No, that's what we're doing here. I know it hurts. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. Oliver, your torso. No, we need to check my colleagues. No, like we found, she wasn't. Ready? She goes, and go again, starting here, and all the way down in the Will's Point, before they get. Okay. I'll say we remember about it, anything like that. Yeah. Stay with me, Danielle. Stay with me. What's your kid's name, Danielle? Tell me the names again. Tell me your kid's name, Danielle. Danielle, what are your kid's names? Danielle. What's your kid's names? Tell me your kid's Danielle. What are their names? Talk to me, Danielle. What are your kid's names?
Hey, Sheriff, do y'all have a graphic to set for the close? I know, but. I just wanted to make some. Yeah, I can't talk.
Okay, Danielle. Okay, you're hot, you're cold. You're hot. Good, having a second, that's a sense.
I'm not, that's good.
Is it? That's what I'm here. Everybody up on it. Since the last match. And we'll just get out of the. Ready to go? Ready to go?
I know, so you're gonna be, so you're gonna be doing one law for the box. Here, hold on to the seat, okay, go. Hold on to this. You're all right. Yeah, that's all right. That's right. You good? Oh, yeah. Stuff on the back. Indeed. Yeah. Fire. Yeah, I would say that's on. Actually, but the whole. Okay.
All right, Mr. Hartwell, before we proceed, at this time, we're gonna go ahead and give the jury a break. It's approximately 10:45 AM. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are reminded that you're not to discuss this case with one another or anyone else, okay? Make sure that you have your juror button or your tag outside the jacket so that everyone knows that you're a juror. All right, all rise for the jury. We're gonna be, let's reassemble. Let's take 10 minutes. So be back in the jury room by 10:55. All right, all rise for the jury. All right, you may be seated. We are going to be in recess for 10 minutes. I'll just remind council and everyone that the jurors may be out in the hallway using the restroom, so the vending machines, things of that nature. So just be mindful if you're discussing this. Okay, we're at recess for 10 minutes. Bailiff, if you'll bring the jury in, please. Yes, sir. All right, you may be seated. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. All right, Hartwell, you still have additional questions for Dean Ward Stokes?
I do, Your Honor.
May proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Game Warden Stokes, so at the end of the video, Miss Ashby was being transported on a gurney. Was at that point in time, were you able to kind of wrap up and head out?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any other interaction on scene?
At that point, I was just gathering my things, preparing to leave, and one of the deputies asked me to remain on scene, that they thought that the shooter was going to return to the scene.
And did Miss Newton in fact return to the scene?
Yes, she did.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Can you describe her shirt or jacket and where she's sitting?
She's wearing a gray shirt and a black jacket.
And Your Honor, may the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant as Shelby.
Record will reflect that this witness has identified the defendant in this case, Shelby.
Thank you. Do you recall about what time Miss Newton arrived back on scene?
I would have to look at my report. I don't remember the time.
So looking at your report would refresh your memory.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
And Dean Warden Stokes, I'm handing you a copy of your report.
Yes, sir.
Which kind of fits to review that, can you please set it back down? Do you recall about what time she arrived back?
At 10:24 p.m., she arrived back on the scene.
And you mentioned earlier that somebody had told you that they expected her back on scene. Did they tell you why, or why were you supposed to be standing around or waiting for her?
I think that they had talked to a family member of hers that said she was coming back, I think is why.
And why were you needed to stay behind?
They just wanted, they didn't know, they being the sheriff's department. It's not a real large sheriff's department. There's not a lot of deputies, and, you know, there's a shooting, they're all working that, and a potential shooter is coming back to the scene. So they just wanted all the help they could get.
And what did you end up doing once Miss Newton arrived back on scene?
Once she arrived on scene and we took her into custody, or we detained her, I guess, I stood there and just kind of watched her and made sure anything she needed, you know, tried to just kind of be there with her.
At some point, did you inform Miss Newton of her Miranda rights?
Yes, sir, I did.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
The witness. So some kind of was been marked as Stacy to the two. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And is that also a copy of your body worn camera?
Yes, it is.
Same body worn camera that you wore for the first video?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, state would offer Stacy to the two.
Any objections, Mr. Crawford? There being no objection, states exhibit 2 is admitted.
And grant permission to publish to the jury.
Granted.
That's okay. You have the right to remain silent. You understand? You understand? Okay. Anything you say may be used against you in court. Do you understand? You have the right to an attorney during questioning. Do you understand? If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Do you understand? Okay.
Trooper Stokes, or I'm sorry, Game Warden Stokes. Do you remember about how long you stood with Miss Newton?
I don't remember exactly. I know it was a substantial amount of time we were standing there.
And what did Miss Newton say about how she felt about what happened?
At one point, she said, "I'm so sorry." She was crying. She asked me to pray with her. She asked me if I believed in God and if I would pray with her. So she was, for a lot of the time, she was upset, and then for some of the time, she was kind of in a joking mood as well.
Thank you, Game Warden Stokes. Your Honor, state pass please.
Thank you. Mr. Crawford, your witness, sir.
So the video, were you there in Mirandus that had what you talked about?
That particular clip,
Yeah, do you have a video of that?
I've handed in all my body cams.
It's not part of the video. Talk to her about. Show her.
That was a clip of the full video.
That was.
No, sir.
Sorry, Mr. Crawford. Just gonna move this microphone over here to this other side. Other side, so we can face the jury. Yeah.
Gotta find the full video.
I was supposed to give you the.
Under optional completeness, Judge, I need to find the rest of that video. We've been working on looking at it for a second. Okay. You didn't see anything happen, did you? You didn't see a shooting occur, did you?
No, sir, I did not.
You didn't witness anything, did you? You didn't witness a shooting, did you?
I did not witness a shooting.
So you don't really know what happened there other than what you saw when you walked up, saw the lady on the ground, right?
I don't know what happened before I got there. I think that's what you're asking. Yes, sir. I did not see what happened before I got there, correct?
You didn't witness any crimes committed.
No, sir.
Judge, I was have to have him subject to recall or I can play the rest of the video. Stop the process, right?
Yes, sir. You passed the witness.
Yes.
And Your Honor, if I may approach counsel,
Counselor.
in terms of that specific issue.
All right, I believe, Mr. Hartwell, that Mr. Crawford has passed this witness back to the state.
State has no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Crawford, if you're satisfied, you've received all the testimony subject to being recalled.
I'm subject to recall, subject to recall on the basis of this option things.
All right, so Game Warden Stokes, you're about to be excused for your testimony at this time. However, you are going to be subject to the rule as previously admonished, not to discuss this case with anyone else or their testimony. In this case with anyone else except for the attorneys from the state. Attorney. Subject to recall, so if you're contacted by the state, then it's still still required to be. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Free to go at this time. Watch yourself.
Thank you.
And what road you want to get this report there. All right, does the state have another witness that wants to call?
Yes, Your Honor. State calls Trooper Prosper.
Trooper Prosper. What's your step? Yes, see. Yes, you will recall that you've already been placed under oath to tell the truth that was for today, subject to penalty. Recall it, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's see, make yourself as comfortable as possible. Knowing that you've testified many times in this court, you're not required to lean into the microphone.
Yes, sir.
Follow the standing rule. Allow the attorneys to finish their questions before you give an answer. If you're an emergency vehicle or something of that nature that's going to prevent others from hearing your testimony, stop if that sound go by. Also, if any of the attorneys stands up to object during your testimony, stop testifying, let the court address the objection. And we'll proceed, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hartwell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Trooper Prosper.
Good morning.
Can you please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the record?
James Cosper, Cosper.
Can you tell me what you do for a living?
I'm employed as a trooper with the Texas Department of Public Safety.
How long have you been a state trooper?
This makes 16 years.
Did you do anything before being a trooper?
Yes, sir.
What was your employment before becoming a?
8 years, I was a city police officer at Baton Rouge, Louisiana Police Department. From 1998 to 2008, I was in the U.S. Army Reserves. From 2010 to 2020, I was in the Air Force Reserve, retired in December of 2020.
And what were your duties in the Army Reserves and Air Force Reserves?
I was 95 Bravo military police for the U.S. Army, and I was a 3PO71 security forces in the Air Force, which is the Air Force variant of military police.
As part of, did you receive any kind of specialized training in your reserve?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm a certified combat lifesaver, and received that certification in the Army, and it also carried over into the Air Force.
And as a state trooper, have you received any kind of specialized training?
Yes, sir. I've been to a combat lifesaver variant put on by the Alert facility for trauma care and stop the bleeding life-saving courses.
Can you tell me what ALERT stands for?
Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. It is the federally certified active shooter training course that is it's actually the only nationally certified training standard for active shooter response. And I am a certified instructor for level 1, which is the basic response, level 2, which is the combat lifesaver portion of it. I'm a level 3 erase, which is if an active shooter event takes place in an outdoor facility, outdoor areas.
And do you recall January 25th, 2021?
Yes, sir.
Did something happen to draw you to respond that night?
Yes, sir. We received, or
Van Zandt County Sheriff's Office Dispatch received a call of a possible shooting with a victim involved at a unknown address residence north of Wills Point.
And you say north of Wills Point, was it still inside Van Zandt County that you were responding to?
Yes, it was still inside the county of Van Zandt. The area was described as the Willow Lakes community, which is a gated community. I'm estimating maybe 5 miles to 10 miles north of Wills Point, still inside the county of Van Zandt.
And is that the location that you responded to after the call came out?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me when you first arrived, about, just your arrival and what you observed?
Yes, sir. When we arrived, it is a gated community that requires an access code to make entry into. Myself, Steve Hendricks, and Game Warden Drew Stokes arrived to the front entrance of the community.
And you say a gated community, were you able to gain access into the community?
Yes, sir. Mr. Hendricks, I believe, if memory serves, he was a seated member of the Housing Authority or Council, I believe, of that community. He knew the gate code to allow us entry inside.
So after gaining entry into the community, what did you do next?
I was unfamiliar with the layout of that gated community. Again, because it's a gated community, we don't have routine access into it. Mr. Hendricks advised that he was pretty familiar with the area and had an idea of a possible location where this incident may be located. So we followed his lead.
So following his lead, were you able to come across the location where the incident happened?
Yes, sir. On the other side of the community, the roads kind of curved, took turns. We arrived to an area that was very unlit as far as there were no residential lighting or street lighting for this specific section. It was very dark. And Mr. Hendricks described, he believed this could possibly be the location.
I'll rephrase it.
Or it sustains the defendant's objection as to hearsay.
So you arrived to the location. Were you able to immediately observe where Miss Ashby was?
Not immediately, no, sir.
What did you decide to do since you couldn't find her right away?
From a tactical standpoint, the area was unlit, it was dark. Mr. Hendricks and Game Warden Stokes said they would approach from the.
Somebody else say it, Judge.
Or it sustains the objection as to hearsay.
Without telling us what Sheriff Hendricks and Game Warden Stokes told you, what did they do?
They approached to the front area of the residence. I approached from the rear side.
And at some point, did somebody find Miss Ashby?
Yes, sir.
What were you the first one to find Miss Ashby?
I was not the first one.
What did you do once Miss Ashby was found?
Once the victim was identified as laying on the ground in front of the residence, I ran back to my patrol vehicle. I secured my long shotgun and obtained my individual first aid kit, which contained combat life-saving equipment. And then I ran to the front of the residence, located the victim laying on the ground.
And earlier you said, when you were discussing your training with the military and trooper as far as, trauma related events, have you had prior experience dealing with gunshot wounds?
Yes, sir.
So when you approached Miss Ashby, what was your thought process in addressing the situation?
There was a substantial amount of blood on the ground where the victim was laying. The victim was wearing a dark colored hooded sweatshirt, blue jeans, and street style tennis shoes. The first thing is a triage of the victim. I removed my medical shears from my IFAC kit. I cut away the sweatshirt, then I cut away her t-shirt and did an assessment of her injuries.
And when you say IFAC, what does IFAC mean?
It's an individual first aid kit. IFAK stands for individual first aid kit, or IFAK, commonly referred to as an IFAK.
So, once you cut away her clothing, can you tell me about, the triaging process?
Yes, sir. The triaging process is to locate the injuries sustained in the trauma-related events, and immediately observed several what obviously appeared to be gunshot entry points into the victim. I believe there were two located in the upper right chest area. There was a entry and exit on her right arm. There was two more on her lower right side, and then two on her left side.
And you said that you could see blood on her clothing. Can you describe the quantity of blood that you saw? What, I mean, are we talking a little bit, like a paper cut, or, I mean, just kind of describe the amount?
From my training experience, it appeared to be a life-threatening amount. As far as it was a lot to give an estimation, it was a lot.
Was there anything about the quality of the blood that you saw that suggested to you how serious the wound was?
Oxygenated blood coming from the arteries is a bright red color. That's what we call our lifeblood. That's the blood that you need to survive on. Dark red blood, in comparison to maybe a light laceration on your hand or your finger, is going to be a dark red blood because it's unoxygenated. It's thicker. The blood that was on the clothing and on the ground and on the victim's person itself was appeared to be bright red.
And did you see any signs of other internal injuries?
During this process of the triage, she began to spit up a pink colored foam substance from her mouth, and due to the location of two shots being in the upper chest area, that's very indicative of what is a lung shot or a lung injury, in which case basically your lungs function like balloons as they inflate and deflate. I believe that she had at least one of her lungs was possibly injured.
To object to his testimony.
Your Honor, Trooper Cosper has testified that he has received multiple trauma response related trainings. I believe his on-scene assessment, maybe it's not a medical diagnosis, just his observations and why he had responded to the victim the way he did.
Or sustains the objection.
After observing the various injuries, what was your next step?
To attempt to stop and slow the bleeding.
So how did you attempt to stop and slow bleeding?
For the upper right chest area, I used a chest seal occlusion bandage, which is basically a chest seal. We're trying to prevent as much air coming into the chest cavity, which would force the lungs to deflate and suffocate the victim. For the other ones, we have quick clot treated bandages, which is treated with a substance that helps force the blood to slow and clot to slow the bleeding in itself. And then we have standard gauze pressure dressings, which we also used on the other areas of the bullet wound entries.
And can you describe Ms. Ashby's demeanor for us?
In and out of consciousness. The few times when I was trying to get her to constantly talk to me. One of the impressions we get when we do the training is that we don't let the victims go to sleep. We try to keep them conscious. If that involves trying to keep them talking, tapping them on the cheek, any method to prevent them from falling unconscious. But she was in and out of consciousness. Her breathing sounded slow and shallow. Again, it was indicative of, what I believed for my training experience to be a possible lung injury, with the inclusion of blood loss. She was in and out of consciousness.
Did you have any expectations about what was going to happen?
I've done tours of duty overseas. I've seen my share.
Non-responsive.
Sustain.
Um, so, can you tell me about your history with the military, what you did in the military?
Yes, I have a tour of duty.
Extra relevance to what his history of military is.
Struggle.
Your Honor, again, his experiences lead to why he acted the way he did. What his response was, why he took further actions. Having those experiences, lead him to certain actions, training experiences are the past forms of present.
Having a problem talking about what he did. Like speculation about internal injuries, things like that. He's not a doctor. He's not a nurse, he's not licensed to be a doctor. He's not a hospital authority. I think that's speculation too. I don't mind him saying what he did on the scene. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's speculations as to what he thinks the injury was. Can't sit inside a body.
Mr. Harwell, do you intend to ask him, give an opinion to the jury regarding an injury sustained by the victim, or are you attempting to give further background information that Trooper Cosper has as far as training and experience to prove him up as an expert?
Your Honor, I'm intending to ask him why he asked certain questions that he asked. What was his thought process and why it was so important to ask the victim the questions that he asked.
So you're not going to ask him to give the jury any an opinion or expert opinion as to any bodily injury suffered by the victim based on his training and experience?
No expert opinion, just the opinion of being a state trooper and an investigator.
All right, the court's going to deny the objection, overrule the objection, but admonish that the state's not to ask any questions that seeks to elicit any type of expert opinion from Trooper Cosper until he's proven up to be qualified to give an expert opinion to this jury.
May we approach real quick?
You may. All right, ladies and gentlemen, jury. I want to go ahead and break at this time. It's 11:30. Indicated that we would break as much about this time, so we've got a good break in the action. So you are to remember the court's admonishment, not receive all of the evidence in this case, not receive closing arguments, you not receive the court's jury instructions regarding your deliberations. So it'd be inappropriate to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. We're gonna recess for lunch for an hour and 15 minutes. So that means I need you back in the jury room, ready to re-enter with Deputy O'Reilly by 12:45. So that doesn't mean get back here at 12:45. That means be in the room, ready to go. So I'm gonna give you an hour and 15 minutes to park your car, get in here and be in that room. So don't get back to the courthouse at 12:45. Be in that room, ready to go. Okay, make sure you're wearing your R buttons, even if you go out to a restaurant or whatever, I would wear that. You don't know who else is gonna be in town eating at the same place, maybe have a discussion, so wear those for me when you're out in public, okay? All right, all rise for the jury. All right, you may be seated. All right, court is in recess until 12:45.